The wine burned through me like molten fire, coursing in my veins as William Harrington's words unfolded in what felt like slow motion. My fingernails pressed into my palms, leaving half-moon marks, while the room dissolved into a blur. His voice carried strangely, muted yet sharp enough to cut. "My son deserves better than someone dragged up from the gutter," he declared, projecting his verdict to a room full of his country club companions, business associates, and his stunned family. Street trash dressed in borrowed fabric, pretending to belong in our world. 23 pairs of eyes turned between William and me, waiting to see if the outsider dating the golden boy would dare speak back to the king. My heartbeat pounded in my throat. I folded the napkin carefully, cloth likely worth more than my first apartment's rent, and set it beside the untouched salmon that had cost an absurd fortune. Rising slowly, I kept my voice even. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Harrington. And thank you for finally telling me what you really think." I drew in a breath, shoulders squared. "My name is Zafira. I'm 32, a self-made businesswoman. And this is the story of how a man's attempt at public humiliation turned into the costliest lesson of his life." "Zafira!" "Please don't." Quinn reached for my hand. I gave his fingers a soft squeeze, then slipped free. "It's fine, love. Your father's right. I should remember my place." The satisfied curl of William's lips etched itself into my memory. He looked so certain he had won, that the so-called street rat who dared to love his son had finally been driven off. If only he knew. I walked out with my head high, past Monet in the hallway, past the staff whose eyes dropped to the floor, past the gleaming Bentley in the drive. William had made sure to brag about its price tag being more than I'd earned in 5 years. I stepped through the marble foyer and out toward the circle where my own car waited. Quinn caught up just as I reached it, my modest Toyota, the one William had sneered at when I arrived. Tears streamed down Quinn's cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know he'd." I pulled him close, breathing in his cologne, now mixed with the sharp salt of his tears. "This isn't your fault. I'll talk to him. I'll make him apologize." "No." I brushed a strand of his dark hair back from his face. "No more apologies on his behalf. No more excuses." He finally said aloud what he's thought for a year. "At least now we see the truth." "Zafira!" "Please don't let him destroy us." I kissed his forehead softly. "He can't touch what's real. Quinn, I'll call you tomorrow." Reluctantly, he nodded. I slid behind the wheel and pulled away, watching the Harrington estate shrink in my rearview mirror, its glowing windows fading to tiny stars I'd supposedly never reach. My phone buzzed before I even reached the main road. I ignored it. Likely Rachel, Quinn's mother, trying to smooth over her husband's cruelty, or Patricia, his sister, offering clumsy solidarity. They weren't terrible people, just too timid to ever confront William. I had bigger things to do. Call Danielle. I instructed the car system as I merged onto the highway. The line clicked. "Miss Cross? Is everything okay?" Danielle had worked with me for 6 years, long before the world learned who Zafira Cross was. She could read me like a page. Cancel the Harrington Industries merger. Silence. Then, "Ma'am, we're supposed to sign on Monday. Due diligence is finished. Financing secured." "I'm aware." "End it. The termination fees alone." "I don't care. Send their legal team notice tonight. List irreconcilable differences in culture and vision." Zafira. Danielle only dropped the formal tone when she feared I was about to make a costly move. "This is a $2 billion deal. What happened at that dinner?" "He called me garbage, Danny, in front of a room full of witnesses. Made it plain that someone like me will never be enough for his family or his business. That bastard." I could hear her typing furiously. "I'll have legal draft the termination papers immediately. Should I leak it to the financial press?" "Not yet. Let him wake up to the official notice first. By noon, the media can have their feast." "With pleasure. Anything else?" "Yes. Schedule a meeting with Fairchild Corporation on Monday. If Harrington Industries won't sell, maybe their biggest competitor will. You're planning to buy his rival?" "Why not? Trash has to stand together, doesn't it?" I ended the call and drove in silence. City lights streaking past like reminders of how far I'd climbed from the girl who once slept in shelters and survived on school lunches. William thought he knew me. He thought his background checks told the story. A poor kid who started working at 14, pushed herself through community college and then university with stubborn grit and too much caffeine. What he didn't know was that the same girl he dismissed had built an empire while staying in the shadows. Cross Technologies, the very company his firm was desperate to merge with to stay alive in the digital age, was mine. For a decade, I'd been acquiring patents, recruiting top talent, and positioning myself to control the industry. I'd hidden behind holding companies and trusted executives, letting the loudmouths believe they held the power. Because I'd learned early, real strength comes from being underestimated. As I parked in my building's underground garage, my phone rang again. Incoming call. Martin Keating, CFO of Harrington Industries. That was quicker than expected. Martin had my personal number from earlier merger talks. Zafira, it's Martin. Forgive the late hour, but we just received notice terminating the merger with Cross Technologies. There has to be some mistake. No mistake. But we're signing Monday. The board approved. Shareholders are expecting. Then the board should have considered that before their COO humiliated me in public tonight. A pause. Then Martin's voice dropped. What did William do? Ask him. I'm sure he'll give you his version. Good night, Martin. I ended the call and made my way up to my penthouse. After pouring a glass of scotch, I stepped onto the balcony and let the night air wrap around me while the city below slipped into silence. Somewhere out there, William Harrington's evening was unraveling. I wondered whether he would piece it together immediately, or if it would take him some time to realize that the trash he dismissed held the reins to the one thing his empire needed to survive the year. My phone vibrated. Quinn calling. I let it ring out. My love for him was genuine, but I wasn't sure I could keep my fury at his father from spilling onto him. He didn't deserve that weight. Still, some conflicts couldn't be sidestepped. By dawn, I had 47 missed calls. William himself had tried 6 times, an irony not lost on me. The same man who labeled me worthless was now desperate enough to keep dialing. I was studying quarterly reports over breakfast when Danielle's name flashed across the screen. The press caught wind of the collapsed merger, she said without preamble. Bloomberg is asking for a statement. Tell them Cross Technologies has chosen to pursue alternatives that better reflect our values and long-term vision. I instructed. There was a pause and a low laugh. That's vague enough to sting. I love it. Oh, and Zafira, William Harrington is downstairs. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? He showed up about 20 minutes ago. Security refused to let him through, but he's making quite the spectacle. Should I have him escorted out? I set my mug down, considering, no, let him in, but make him wait in the conference room for half an hour. I'm still eating. Danielle chuckled. Cool. I'll put him in room C, the one with the awful chairs. 45 minutes later, I walked into the conference room. William Harrington was already there, and the transformation from the night before was startling. His immaculate hair was ruffled, his tailored suit creased. The man who had ruled over dinner like royalty now looked like what he was, a desperate executive watching his empire slip away. Zafira, he said, rising stiffly as I entered. I could see how much the gesture cost him. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I sat without offering a handshake. You have 5 minutes. He swallowed hard, as if forcing down shards of glass. I owe you an apology for last night. My behavior was inappropriate. Inappropriate? I let out a sharp laugh. You called me garbage in front of your colleagues, your family, your friends. You humiliated me in your home while I was seated at your table, as your guest and as your son's partner. I was drunk. No, I cut him off. You were honest. Alcohol loosens a tongue. It doesn't invent truths. From the moment Quinn introduced me, you believed I was beneath you. Last night, you finally voiced it. His jaw tightened. Even now, even cornered, the disdain flickered in his eyes. What do you want? An apology? You have it. A public statement? I'll make one. But the merger must go through. You know it's essential. Why? He blinked. What? Why should it happen? Explain to me why I should do business with a man who disrespects me at the core of who I am. Color rose to his cheeks. Because it's business. It isn't personal. Everything becomes personal the moment you make it so. I stood, my voice sharper now. You had my life investigated, didn't you? You found the foster homes, the free school meals, the night shifts in warehouses to buy textbooks. He gave a reluctant nod. But you stopped there. You saw where I came from and assumed that was all I'd ever be. You never bothered to look at where I was going. I walked to the window, motioning to the skyline beyond. Do you know why Cross Technologies thrives, William? Because your products sell, he muttered. No, I said firmly. Because I remember hunger. I remember being overlooked, dismissed, underestimated. Every hire we make, every partnership we forge, every product we design. I ask if it creates opportunity or if it merely shields privilege. Turning back to him, I held his gaze. Your company represents everything I built mine to challenge. Old wealth defending outdated ideas. Doors locked to anyone who didn't inherit their seat at the table. His lips parted to protest, but I cut him short. Tell me, William, name one person on your board who didn't graduate from an Ivy League school. One executive who grew up poor. One senior manager who had to juggle 3 jobs just to finish community college. William said nothing. His silence told me everything. The merger is finished, William. Not because of your insult, but because you revealed exactly who you are, and worse, who your company is. His shoulders slumped. This will destroy us. Without that deal, Harrington Industries won't survive 2 years. Then maybe it shouldn't, I replied, moving toward the door. Maybe it's time for the old guard to step aside and let businesses led by vision, not pedigree, take the lead. Wait. He sprang up so quickly his chair toppled behind him. What about Quinn? You're about to wreck his father's company, his legacy, his inheritance. I paused with my hand on the door. Quinn is brilliant. He's driven. He doesn't need inherited success. He can build his own. That's the difference between us. You think inheritance defines destiny. I see it as a crutch. He'll never forgive you. Maybe not, I said, meeting his eyes one last time. But at least he'll know I stood for something that couldn't be bought or bullied. Can you say the same? I left him there, returning to my office. Danielle was waiting, arms full of messages and a knowing expression. Fairchild Corporation wants to meet Monday morning, she reported. They're very interested in acquisition talks. Good. Make sure William hears about it this afternoon. Already arranged for the leak, she said smoothly, then hesitated. Also, Quinn's here. He's in your private office. My pulse jumped. How long? About an hour. I gave him coffee and tissues. He called the main line asking for you, and when I told him you were with his father, he asked if he could wait. Given everything, I thought you'd want that. I nodded and went inside. Quinn was curled in my chair, eyes rimmed red but no longer wet. He looked up, and in his face I saw his father's strength tempered by his mother's gentleness. Hi, he said softly. Hi, I replied, moving closer. I heard what you told him, Quinn continued. Danielle, let me watch the conference feed. I perched on the edge of my desk, and he rose, stepping between my knees. And I think I've been a coward. I let him treat you like that. I made excuses. I hoped it would change. But last night, I was ashamed. Not of you, of him. Of myself for never standing up to him. Quinn, no. Let me finish, he said, holding my hands. I've lived my whole life benefiting from his prejudice without challenging it. I don't want to do that anymore. If you'll have me, I want to build something with you. No family money. No conditions. No approval required. I pulled him close, searching his face. Are you sure? He was right about one thing. Walking away from that inheritance is no small thing. Quinn laughed, and the sound was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in days. Zafira Cross, you just killed a $2 billion merger because my father insulted you. I think we'll figure out the money part. I love you. I whispered, meaning it more than ever. I love you, too. Even if you just declared war on my father's company. Especially because I declared war on your father's company. Especially because of that, he agreed, kissing me. My phone buzzed. Danielle again. Ma'am, Harrington's board has called an emergency meeting. Sources say they're considering contacting you directly. Over William's head, I set the call to speaker. Tell them Cross Technologies is open to a merger under new leadership. Stress the new. Quinn's eyes widened. You're planning to push my father out his own company. I'm giving the board a choice, I said calmly. Evolve or collapse. What they do with that choice is theirs. He won't step aside quietly. I wouldn't expect him to. This will get ugly. Almost certainly. My mother will cry. Definitely. My sister will probably write another awful song about family drama. God help us all. He smiled then, sharp, radiant, with a dangerous edge. So when do we start? I matched his grin. How about now? And that's how the so-called nobody who dated the heir became the one who toppled the dynasty, not with armies or blades, but with a truth too sharp to ignore. Respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And when people refuse to give it where it's due, sometimes the so-called garbage takes itself out, dragging the rest with it. By Monday, William Harrington was no longer CEO of Harrington Industries. By Tuesday, Cross Technologies announced a merger with the newly restructured company. By Wednesday, Quinn accepted a role as head of strategic development, rejecting his father's offer to bankroll a competing venture. And by Thursday, William Harrington had paid the steepest price of his life. He learned that when you call someone garbage, you better be ready to end up in the bin yourself. 6 months later, Quinn and I were engaged, planning a small wedding far away from his father's social circle. William hadn't spoken to either of us since his fall, though Quinn's mother had started calling weekly, carefully rebuilding their relationship on more honest terms. And for those who stuck with me to the end, here's a bonus. If you're as obsessed with learning as I am, audiobooks are a treasure. I've partnered with Audible to get you your first month free. That's access to more than 500,000 titles at no cost. Details are in the description. Don't miss out.